Hi everyone. Today I'm here to give my predictions and speculations for The Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 2, titled Strangers. So, let's get started with my thoughts, my predictions, and my speculations on what I think will happen in this episode. Now, in the promos that we saw for Episode 2, No Strangers, we see Rick and the rest of the group walking in the woods. In the second promo that we saw Preacher Gabriel on top of a rock screaming for help because zombies was trying to attack him. Now, it's obvious that Preacher Gabriel will be in this episode, so his character is now confirmed to be in the TV series. Also in this episode, what I predict and I think will happen is because, well, let me say this better. What I predict and I think will happen. If you remember the Comic-Con trailer that was released for The Walking Dead Season 5, in that trailer, you will see Rick in a department building. And I think it's a department store. You see Rick, you see Michonne, you see not Daryl, but you see Rick, you see Michonne. I think you see Glenn, and I think Maggie's in there, and I think that Gabriel might go with them to that department store to look for some food and supplies. Because in the Comic-Con trailer, you see Rick at the bottom of a floor. Now, this floor has a whole bunch of water at the bottom of the floor, and you see zombies at the bottom of that floor with Rick and the rest of the group in that water trying to attack them. And you see Rick and the rest of the group pushing the shelf down on the zombies while they're walking in the water. Now, within that scene, Bob, I think that Bob will end up getting bit in his episode because, like I said, in the Comic Con trailer, you see Bob hanging on some type of rail, and you see a hand come up and grab him by his shirt. But that's when the Comic Con trailer cuts off. I think that Bob will end up getting bit on that. Well, I think he will end up getting bit once Rick chooses to take that risky supply run at that department store that they go to. And I think that Gabriel will end up leading them to that department store because I don't think Rick just randomly ends up running into that department store. He might end up asking Gabriel some questions because I do think that Rick, well, of course, Rick and the group is going to save Gabriel. That's how they meet him because they see him on the rock screaming for help. So Rick and his group will end up saving Gabriel, and I think that Gabriel might tell them about a department store that they can go get food and supplies from. And I think why they do that, I think Bob will end up getting bit on that run. Also, in in the final moments of the first episode of season 5, you see markings on the tree. You see X marks carved on the tree. I think Rick probably did that to possibly draw some of the termites out of tournaments to follow that sign that's on them trees, so Rick can end up getting his hands on them to kill them. Because remember, Rick did say we have to go back and kill him. And the group told him, no, it's already done. But like I said in my review, you notice Rick never replied back to that question. So I think that Rick is probably going to try to draw them out and have them follow them so he can end up killing them. That's the reason. And so I think Rick was the guy who had put those, that had carved those X signs on that tree so they can follow those signs so he can so they can get him and finish him off. Because Rick know it's possible that he won't be able to live in peace while they still running while the termites are still running around, because he know they want revenge. He knows this. So he's going to get to them to kill them first so he can possibly think he can live in peace. So he want to get rid of Garrett at this point. Also, in the trailer, in the promo, well, in the Comic-Con trailer, you see a church van was driving in the middle of the road. And the church van ends up bumping another car, so the church van ends up flipping over. Now, remember, on that van, it has church. So I think that Gabriel was in that van, and that van ends up flipping over. So he ends up having to walk. So he might end up going through the woods, and then that's when he encountered those zombies. So then he ends up running on the rock, and he ends up running on the rock, and the zombies ends up trying to get him on that rock. So I think that he was the one driving that van, because if you go back to the Comic-Con trailer, you will see somebody driving a church van, then it flips over. I think that he does have an accident, so I think it might end up him having to walk through the woods and stuff. And remember, Gabriel can't defend his stuff that good because he was always stuck up in that church. He never really got to experience the zombie apocalypse and learn how to survive within that zombie apocalypse because he was always stuck up in that church. So next, what I think will happen. Now, remember, there's another scene in the Comic-Con trailer. We see Abraham in Gabriel's church beating a guy to death with the with the handle of his gun, and you can see blood splatters all over the camera. You can see how Abraham have a whole bunch of blood on his body. I think that this title strangers mean that some of the termites will try to end up going into Gabriel's church, and they might succeed in that because because we don't see the person that Abraham kills when he bashes in his skull, but I'm pretty sure it's one of the termites that ends up getting into the church. Because I remember there's another scene in the Comic-Con trailer that we see. Everybody is gathered in one room. We see everybody gathered in one room, and we see Sasha sitting in the chair, and we see a bed. But then the Comic-Con trailer cuts off from that scene. I think that's Bob in that bed, and he's possibly dying, and we see Sasha right by his hand, just like Andrea did with Dale in the comic book when they had went to Gabriel's church. The same thing happened. Everybody was gathered in a room looking at Dale while he was in the bed dying, and of course he had Andrea right next to him talking to him because they was lovers. Now the same opposite happens with Sasha and Bob. Bob is in the bed and Sasha is right there by his side, sitting in the chair by the bed, talking to him and stuff. And we see everybody in that room in that scene, except we don't see Abraham. But it's revealed Abraham is in that room where everybody else is in, but you can't see him. Now, in that scene, you see a arm. It's Abraham's arm that you see, and the arm is real bloody. So that tells you that he killed this guy first because this guy had got into the church and tried to harm them. So he ends up killing one of the termite guys first, and I think that's what's going to happen. He ends up killing them because they might try to get in the church and harm them. But next, I think Garrett will succeed in getting into the church because when we see Garrett in the church, we see scriptures and stuff and numbers written on the wall. We see Garrett kind of leaning. He has a gun in his hand and he's kind of leaning next to a door, a open door kind of, and he's kind of peeping in it in this dark time in the church. I think that Garrett will possibly succeed in getting into that church, and he might end up taking Bob. I think he might take Bob in the middle of the night and take him from out the church and probably do like they did in the comic book, take Bob to the woods and possibly torture him and cut off his leg. That's how I think I see it. I think I see it happening like that. Because remember again in the Comic-Con trailer, we see Gabriel's church is real dark. It's real dark, and we see Rick outside shooting his revolver, and Rick says, "Run!" Now the same thing happened in the comic book. Where they was at Gabriel's church, and it was nighttime, and Rick says, "Run!" and he was shooting his gun at the hunters. Now the same thing happened. Happens in this could possibly happen in this episode or the next episode. I see Rick possibly they might end up getting Bob back in the next episode because we do see a scene is real dark and we hear Rick saying run and we see all the characters running back to the church. So they might end up getting Bob then, but I definitely say that Garrett will possibly succeed in probably getting Bob getting Bob up out of the church house. So that's my possible predictions for this episode. Let me see how long this video is. Yeah, that's my possible predictions. Again, I want to say it again. I think that one of the termites will get into the church the first time, but they won't succeed because Abraham will stop them and beat their skull in. That's the reason why he got that blood on his arm. And again, when everybody's gathered in that one room in the common control, go back and watch. When everybody's gathered in that one room, you don't see Abraham, but he's actually in the room. You can't see his full body, but you do see somebody's arm in the room, and that arm has blood on it. So that right there has proven that somebody will try to get into it the first time, but it don't work. But Garrett, I think that Garrett will possibly end up getting into it. And like I said about Rick making that food run in that department, he might end up trying to go get some food, and that might be the cause of possibly Bob getting bit. That's just me. I mean, we kind of knew Bob was gonna happen anyway. So from the Comic Con trailer, so yeah, and I think they might use it. I think my predicted speculations is I hope this happened. I think when I think when Garrett takes Bob and stuff, I hope Bob says that line when they take him and they try to eat him and they start eating him and Bob tell him I think Bob might he might tell him I've been bit. The meat you're eating the meat that you are eating is tainted meat is bad because I already been bitten. I was dying anyway. It's the same thing Dale said in the comic book when the hunters took him. He was kind of laughing about it. So I hope that happened, man. I can't wait for this episode. I hope this episode be real good. And yeah, and also we see another scene with Gabriel and stuff confessing his sins, and we see another scene with Rick coming into the church, and we see Rick checking out the church because ain't nobody is in the church, so Rick is real skeptical, and Rick is asking Gabriel, I hope this ain't no way. He ain't said it like that, but he was saying that I hope it's. I think he was trying to check to see if it was a trap because it looks too good to be true. Ain't nobody in that church. So that's when, but also we see another scene of Garrett of Gabriel breaking down. That's when I that's when I think that's when I think Rick is going to ask him why. I think Rick's going to ask him why is it there's nobody in this church but you. And then I think Gabriel will confess to Rick that, well, you know what, it had people want to come to my church, but I was scared. I didn't want to feed them. I didn't have enough food to feed them, so I chose to lock them outside of the church, and I chose to hear them get slaughtered by zombies. Then I think Gabriel would start crying, and that's the scene that we see him talking about. He's a sinner. He's a sinner, and he confesses his sins. So I think how this is going to play out, and I think that this episode will set up the real true confrontation between Rick versus Garrett. So hope you guys enjoyed my prediction speculation video. I know I kind of skipped over some things. Like I said, it's hard when you don't take notes and nothing, but hope you guys enjoyed it and have a blessed day. God bless you. Peace.